is about who? This is about Azadian?
Azadian, yeah.
Okay, so he was an inventor. Go ahead, tell me.
Well, there's a story written about it by the Brown Light Chapin Company. Brown Light was the Brown Light Gear Company people in Syracuse, New York. Years later, many years later, it became part of GM. But Azadian was doing work for them as early as 1899 with his gauge blocks.
Okay.
And he fabricated a set of gauge blocks in 1899, and it took a year to cure them, at least a year. And so he succeeds in doing it, and then he's doing increasing work for Brown Light Gear Company. That started his career. 1901, he gets a job working for the Standard Gauge Manufacturing Company in Syracuse. And then, from that point on, he's inventing recognized improvements in gauge materials. The board-on spring gauges, eccentric and concentric motion gauges, pressure gauges, vacuum gauges, and so forth. Well, anyway, make a long story short, in 1901, he invents the adjustable rack and pinion motion.
Oh, interesting.
Within less than a year, at George Hines' prompting, who's got patent lawyer connections with some of his friends in Syracuse, he prompts Azadian to apply for a patent, and he handles his first patent. George Hines does. And within less than a year, his patent is awarded.
Everybody's all right here? No more coffee, sir?
I'm fine right now. Thank you.
Very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
You all have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay?
Same to you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So this is what he patented. This guy
in
patented rack and
in
pinion.
December of 1902,
That's a good way to look at
the
it.
patent is awarded, less than a year after he applies for it.
We're talking about an Armenian guy.
Yeah,
Azadian.
he's related to us through marriage. It's his wife whose family went to Grand Rapids, Michigan. That's where Grandma Pearl was from when she came from the old country. They moved to Grand Rapids. Her family and Azadian's sisters-in-law, two of whom lived in Grand Rapids. So they would go and visit them. Meantime, my grandfather, Kolakian, meets Azadian when he first comes to Syracuse, and they become fast friends. They're like brothers. And so it was Azadian who did a lot of early work for the Brown family in Syracuse. The Browns were all working for Henry Ford in his first operation at Mack Avenue.
Thank you.
They're listed on the assembly line tickets that are now in the Ford Motor Company archives. I traced them all the way through that. And there's a story written about him with the Browns in 1926 on the occasion of an anniversary program that the company had in Syracuse at the Hotel Onondaga Roof Garden. At that point, they produced a transcript of that talk given by Alexander Brown II, which would be Alexander Timothy Brown's nephew. He was one of the founders of the company, and Alexander Brown II's father was William Brown, Timothy Brown's brother. The two of them get together in 1906 and they form the Brown Light Gear Company. It later became part of GM many years later.
We should get going.
So we still have that story. And
There you go.
There was an awful lot of work done for Henry Ford, and eventually what it led to was Azadian's manufacturing a whole host of automotive accessories with the Ford label on them, and he did very well with that industry, making accessory gauges for the Ford automobiles. But his big job in 1908 was the fabrication of the two-speed release lever gear planetary transmission that he did for Alexander Brown, William Brown.
Where was the Browns company located?
Syracuse, not too far from our present-day store. It's only a few blocks. We can walk west along Genesee Street, then to Marcellus Street, and it was right in those group of buildings. And incidentally, the Brown Light Gear Company building, which was finished in 1908, was the first production run of machinery that produced the Henry Ford transmission, planetary transmission for him in 1908 for the installation in his new Model T. The first run of transmissions for that Model T were made in Syracuse. And Azadian was one who helped put that whole thing together. We have that story. And that's cited.
This is why I wanted to be an inventor when I was young. Listening to all these stories from everybody, my dad and everything, I wanted to be an inventor. But it never worked to that. I ended up becoming a non-productive state worker. So I'll send this to Brian.
Well,
yeah, I did all right. I did all right.
You did okay.
So
Absolutely.
I'll email parts of this to Brian.
Okay.
This is my quick recording for Brian, so he'll, this is it. This is what I call this is breakfast with the walking encyclopedia. My cousin, Bobby Kulakin.
Have you ever been called that?
Well, I used to be called that when I
but
memorized
it
things,
makes
but there.
Okay.
Your father and I had a lot of these discussions.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And we would talk about Edison and we
Yeah.
would talk about Nikola Tesla.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Do
See?
you need a coffee to go?
All right.